watching, the watcher's watching me. Cameras spinning, eyes, no place to be free. High towers whisper to the ground below. Promises broken where the taxes grow. C.S.I. watchdogs sniff the trail. Follow the lies where the big dogs fail. Truth uncovered, corruption's face. Tear down the mask in the shadow place. Tear down the mask in the shadow place.
All right, good evening. We'll go ahead and call to order the third budget hearing for FY27. Superintendent Nix, we have a presentation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Board. Before Austin comes up, I have asked him to put his presentation in video. As you know, I want it to be consistent across all three of our public hearings. Everybody hears the same thing. It's also there for folks to use if they want to go back and refer to it. Of course, he is here. He is happy to answer any questions that the board has. But just before that, I wanted to talk and set a little bit of context for his presentation on the proposed mill rate and budget. But the primary reason that we are here, in a lot of ways, that folks are really concerned about when you talk about mill rates and property taxes, is what affects the local budget. Property taxes and mill rates have an outsized influence on the local budget. So the local budget, what is it? Well, it's from property taxes, and it's about 40% of the school system's total budget, with the state budget being the other 60%. There's some federal money in there, but it's pretty insignificant. What does a local budget fund? Where do my property taxes go? What do my property taxes fund? Do they fund teachers? Not really. That's funded by the state budget. Do they fund counselors? Not really. Do they fund principals, assistant principals, directors, and superintendents? There's a portion of the local property taxes that are added to those employees in a local stipend to help each county in the state of Georgia attract talent. All of the folks who are paid on the state budget, that 60% that comes from the QBE formula to school systems, they are paid on a state salary scale. The state provides the money, and the state says, here's how much money you will get, and the state says, if you have these degrees, you will get more money. If you Google the lowest paid profession in the state of Georgia that requires a 4-year degree, it's teachers. It's educators. The state requires that degree in order for the person to get that job. They are paid out of state funding. So when we look at the local budget, that's not primarily what funds those individuals. And remember, we've said over and over again that 90%, right at, of the school district's budget is personnel. We cannot turn off enough lights, use an older tire on a bus, find some energy efficient way to make huge gains in the local budget, since 90% of it is personnel costs. And that's pretty true among all businesses and industries. So the local budget funds non-state certified employees. In other words, they do not have to have a certificate from the state to become employed. They do not get paid by the state. So the state does not tell them, here's what you have to have in order to be a custodian, or someone who answers the phones at the schools, or our bookkeepers, or our maintenance staff, our bus drivers, or paraprofessionals, our folks who work on HVACs and roofs. Those are the folks that we are primarily talking about that are funded by the local budget. In addition to that, there are some maintenance costs that are in there, but school districts across the state of Georgia, and certainly here, use their E-SPLOST funds for a lot of that, because that's one of the only places that you can spend E-SPLOST funds is on capital improvements. Catoosa County Public Schools is not the only school system in Georgia in the last few years to face tremendous funding cuts from the state. Health insurance has gone up. The state is paying a much less percentage of those costs now. They are shifting a lot of that funding burden onto local systems. These are not my thoughts. This is just the facts. When I said this a few years ago, it was news. Now, everyone knows that. You can pick up and read any newspaper. The Chattanooga Times, Free Press had an article on it just yesterday. Catoosa County Public Schools made a conscious decision, a strategic decision, when the property tax values increased 30% on residential and 60% on businesses, because they have not been increased in 1 year on homes and 2 years on businesses. It was a sticker shock. Property values went so high. The school board gave direct tax relief to every single community homestead owner in Catoosa County by using the reserves to cushion that blow. This board could have said, we're not doing that. We're going to do like some other boards, and we're going to actually vote to increase the mill rate. They did not. That provided direct relief. But in doing that, we depleted most of our reserve, our undesignated funds. Not designated, you can't designate it or designate it. You have to spend them on this thing or that thing. Undesignated, that reserve. We're making incredible strides in improving our overall budget by doing what you do to improve a budget. There's only two things you can do. It's just like a house. You increase your revenue, and you cut your spending. That's the only way you can do it. So we tried our best to do both. And we cut 100 positions the hard way by attrition. Of our 1,700 employees, nobody got a pink slip that said you don't have a job next year. We're sorry. We did it by attrition. When a person said, hey, I'm retiring, I'm resigning, I'm moving, we did not fill that position. And we saved $4 million in doing that. We also found different ways to maximize funding. We took classes to try to learn how to do it. The state doesn't tell you what to do to increase your funding. They only tell you what to do if you're going to get in trouble. So we optimized, and that's how we have actually gained more money from the state with fewer students. But all of a sudden this year something has hit, and it is going to totally change the trajectory of our budget unless this board acts tonight. We've been hit with 3 large, significant, unfunded mandates. There's mandates from the government, from the state, the schools must do, that are funded. There are also mandates from the state that say you must do this that are unfunded, and we call those unfunded mandates. So what are these 3 big unfunded mandates that are tremendously impacting the school system's budget? Number 1 is a senior tax exemption. This board, myself, everybody that I know understands that our seniors need property tax relief. The challenge is Is it a tax shift or a tax break? A tax shift just says instead of me paying it, you are. A tax break is nobody's paying it. I found some other way to try to help make up that funding. This is a tax shift, in my opinion, because there's no way that the school system can just say, hey, we don't have $3 million. You cannot do that. It will devastate a budget. Any person will look at this budget and tell you that. You cannot do that. You just can't do it in a year. The second one is a private audit. The school system is audited in every way possible. Audited upside down, inside out. We're audited. As a matter of fact, the state is looking now saying you can't do private audits anymore because the school systems that use private audits, like Dublin City, they're the ones that are in trouble. They didn't pay their health insurance for 8 months for their employees. They didn't get a state audit. They got a private audit. The state also passed a rule that said now, even if you get a private audit, you can't use two of them. You've got to use a different one to do it. You can't use two private. You've got to change who you do that with. They cannot provide you with the financial statements and also do your audit. They want you to use the Department of Audits and Accounts because that is the department that works directly for the state legislature and has the power to investigate fraud and abuse and waste in the school system or any other place, be it the Department of Corrections or colleges, anywhere else. They audit the governor. They audit all of that. That's going to cost $500,000 at a minimum. We are already at $200,000 this school year, right at $200,000 for the first year of this audit. No funds for it. And then lastly is the state said we're going to give it employee bonuses. The problem is they didn't give them to everyone. They said, hey, we are going to give employee bonuses. That's a great thing. Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for that. The challenge is we're only going to give it to a certain amount of people. So it's kind of like you as a parent only having one candy bar and you have to give it to this kid. The person that's working super hard also beside that person says, well, I don't get a bonus too. So school districts have to turn around and make up for that if they're going to give their lowest paid, hardest working employees a raise. And I'm talking about our uncertified employees, our bus drivers, our custodians, some of those types of things. And the state does sometimes they'll do bus drivers, sometimes they'll do custodians, sometimes they do a different group. But the long and the short of it is we wanted all of our employees to have the bonus, and in order to do that, it cost the school system out of the local funds $1 million already. We've already given that money to the employees. It's unfunded. Had those things not happened, we would have an additional $1.5 million in the budget right now. Instead of 155% increase in our unreserved funds, it would be far more than that. But we got to come up with it somehow. So these things are going to be massive hits on our budget. So one of the things that I saw a question that I think I want to talk about is this. I thought that the state budget increased again this year. How does the budget increase and yet you're telling us you don't have money? I can look on your budget and see that your money increased. Well, this is a phantom budget, a phantom raise. Here's what happens. The politician says, we are going to fund public education like never before. I'm going to give more money to education than any other person who has ever been elected in office before me. That sounds fantastic. The perception in the local community is the state is giving raises, there's going to be money there. That's awesome. However, the local reality of it is those are pass-through funds. Those funds have already been spent before the school system ever received them. So there's zero funding to the school system that is discretionary, because that is either a funded mandate or a partially funded mandate. So what happens is the legislature passed a law this year that said every single public school will have to fund a literacy coach in all of their elementary schools. This is a law. You have to put one in there, and we're gonna fund it. The problem is they funded 40% of it. Well, you say, well, I'm gonna get somebody a whole lot less qualified who will work for less money. Well, you can't, because the state says they have to have this many years of experience and this type of degree. It's an unfunded mandate. It sounds like your budget increased astronomically, but it didn't. It actually cost you money on your local budget because they didn't give you enough to start with to pay for that. Another great example is healthcare. Healthcare has gone through the roof. When you look at your budget, you will say, oh my gosh, your budget went up $3 million. Yes. But health insurance, that $3 million, I want you to understand that 1.5 million of that, it went to healthcare. So you didn't get the money that sometimes the community thinks that was there. The money is spent before it ever reaches the school systems. That's very difficult because local school districts are left to try to explain that. This board did something that I think is pretty phenomenal, because only 2 out of 10 school districts in the state of Georgia did it. There are 180 school districts in Georgia's 159 counties. And out of those 180 school districts, only about 2 out of 10 opted in to HB 581 to give every single homeowner in their community direct property tax relief. This school system did not have to do it. And 7.5 out of 10 said, we're not doing it. And that's why the law was passed again the following year. They said, now we're going to make everybody, because not enough of you did it. This board volunteered to do it and gave tax relief, not just to this group or that group, but to every single property owner in this county. And it impacts our budget, and will impact it more as we move forward. But the board said it's worth it. Our folks need help. That 581 caps every single homeowner's property tax on their homestead at the rate of inflation. Your property tax cannot go up more than inflation. It cannot do it if you applied for the homestead exemption on your school, and the counties and cities did too. It can't go up. If your property taxes go through the roof, then you need to find out why. Because this bill protects every single homeowner's home from increasing like the crazy market rate volatility that we saw a few years ago. And I appreciate this board doing that, and I know that our community appreciates it as well. Catoosa County Public Schools has not increased the mill rate in 10 years. I think about 7 of those 10, this board took the full rollback. There may have been a year or so that there was a partial rollback, and then maybe 1 year just kept the same rate. 18.69 all the way down to 14.3. There are a lot of things that you can compare, that you can't compare from county to county, from school district to school district. There are certain exemptions in this county, and there are certain exemptions that are not in this county. Some counties give more exemptions than others. Catoosa County gives more exemptions than the 4th largest school in the state of Georgia. We give a lot of exemptions in this county. A lot. Don't take my word for it. Use Google. 10 years. We do not spend $1 more. We do not tax $1 more than is necessary to run the school system. And there are folks, and I get folks that tell me all the time, you don't tax the school system enough. You need to tell your board to tax the school system more because we need this or that in our schools. But our board has been consistent that we try our best to keep our taxes low. 10 years is a long time. Our per pupil expenses, this is what a school district pays to educate a student. That's what this is. How many kids do you have? How much did you spend? How much did you spend on that kid? If you look Catoosa County is far below the state average. And in the middle of all the districts that are from 8,000 to 11,000 students, we're 7 out of 14. And I'll tell you why I think that's a fantastic thing. I don't want to be 14th. As a superintendent, that is not what I'm looking for. I don't want the most poorly funded school system in the state. That's not what I'm looking for. But I also don't think we have to be the top funded school system either. But I do think that it is very fair, and I do think that our community expects that this board and that this superintendent will make sure that we have good schools, good buses, good quality educators for our school system. We don't pay our teachers the most. Our people do not make the most money. But we also don't want them to be making the least money either. So I think that this shows that Catoosa County is spending the right amount of money to educate their community. Why can't you wait? I've heard this question. Why can't you wait? Why doesn't the board just wait and just wait and increase the mill rate next year? Because, you know, some of these things, they're not going to affect the school system's budget maybe yet, but I'm not sure I understand it, but why not wait? Why not push that down the road a year? I'm going to tell you 5 reasons why we can't wait. Number one, there's confusion on the school budgets. It is terribly confusing. That's why schools have accountants and CPAs, and that's why the state has actuaries that sit around and determine these things. It's very complex. But one of the things I think that makes a tremendous confusion for folks is the difference between fiscal years and calendar years. Everybody knows a calendar year is January to December. We know that. But a fiscal year for the state, and by the way, it's different even from the federal government, but it runs absolutely in the middle of the calendar year. So a fiscal year runs from July to June. So here's the problem of when you think, well, that funding is actually not going to hit the budget until here. If you do it this way, you can probably figure a way to kind of slice that pie really, really thin. The problem is that if we wait until next year to raise the rate to the proposed mill rate of 15.75 mills, that millage rate is applied only to the new shrunken tax base that has had the senior exemption removed from the tax digest. School funding, school budgets, mill rates are proactive, and they are for the future needs of the community and of the school. And it is impossible, it's actually illegal to try to recover lost funds, an ex post facto type of tax. Number two, the law. The law demands that and mandates that every single school board adopt a balanced budget. Now, a school board can balance the budget with some of their reserves if they have it, but you must adopt a balanced budget. You cannot, by law, adopt a budget that's not balanced. So here's what we know. Local boards must adopt a balanced budget where projected expenditures cannot exceed realistic, legally authorized revenues. And we know with absolute certainty that HB 30 will remove $2.5 to $3 million from our local tax digest midway through this budget cycle. Those are not my numbers, those are the numbers from the county assessor. Number three, 2 of the 3 mandates have already hit the budget. So we talked about 3 big hits to the budget that really hurt our budget this year. 2 of them have already hit the budget. That's why I said we would have more money in the undesignated fund had they not already hit. What were those two things? The state employee bonuses that cost $1 million, already hit. We gave those folks their money. And the unfunded mandate of the private audit. Now, $200,000 is already there, so over $1 million already hit the budget. Not budgeted for. An unfunded mandate. Find the money. That's a challenge. And it's already hit the budget. Number 4 is the community feedback. I love that our board and our school system listens to our community. The county has surveys that they put out. As a matter of fact, the cities. As a matter of fact, they give them to me and say, hey, will you send this out to your employees, because we want to make sure that we get lots of folks to participate, because everybody wants a lot of participation on their surveys. So we have 3 big surveys that we send out. The Title I survey, our 5-year strategic plan survey, and then I sent one out this year in preparation for this budgetary cycle when I realized the huge impact that these 3 unfunded mandates were going to have on the budget. We had over 2,000 people that responded. That is a significant amount of people to respond to a survey. Over 2,000. The majority of them, by far, are parents of our kids. They overwhelmingly said, here's what we want, a balanced approach. We want you to increase the millage rate and continue to make the modest cuts to the budget. And that's what they asked for. That's what our community wants. That's what our community asks for. I think it's also important to note that they also said that at the ballot box. We had 2 board members that were up for election this year. And they won overwhelmingly, re-elected. That tells me that our community believes and trusts in what our board is doing. They also supported East Blast when it was pretty seriously opposed. They approved it. Overwhelmingly in a normal budget, in a normal election cycle, no special election. That tells me that our community respects and trusts and supports what this school system is doing. And then lastly, and to me this is the most important thing, by kicking this down the road a year, we would be risking the financial stability of our school system. By acting tonight, the board chooses certainty over uncertainty. There was a bill, it passed this year, SB 33. One of the provisions in that bill removed the ability of a local school board to make financial decisions for its community. It told the board, you can't do anything with your mill rate. You can't adjust it. If you do, we're going to make you put it out. It has to go to referendum. The local board knows most what a local school system needs are. Period. Atlanta is not local. Washington, D.C. is not local. Local is right here in Catoosa County. That's local. So what is to say that in next year, you may not have the ability to control this budget? It could be removed from you. That provision was only removed at the last minute. The very last minute, almost at the end of the 40-day period, because there was such massive pushback on it. They took that little part out and passed the rest of the bill. They could pick something like that up again. The other thing I think is an irresponsible risk to delay that. Waiting to see what happens, kicking the can down the road, so to speak, it puts every single parent, every teacher, and every student in an irresponsible place of uncertainty about their future. I Are we going to have furlough days then? Are we going to have a RIF? Am I going to have a job next year? Choosing certainty over certainty is the responsible thing to do. And I know that that's what our community wants. It's very clear from everything that I've seen here and from the surveys, from the elections. So, one thing I know about Catoosa County Public Schools, whenever I have 18 schools, I've hired 17 of the principals for the 18 schools. And they, in turn, those principals have hired an assistant principal. COVID pressed fast forward on a lot of principals' careers. But what I tell them is you're going to have days where you do not know the answer. You don't know exactly what to do. And I said, here's the guiding principle that you use. Catoosa County Public Schools does what's best for kids. That's what you say. And that will determine the decision you make. We don't always do what's best for adults. When you do what's best for adults, then you have to say, which adults am I going to do the best for? We do what's best for kids. And I even have to say that sometimes to teachers. I understand that you may not want to do this, you may not want to teach that this semester. But remember, what do we do? And every principal can tell you, we do what's best for kids. And I know that this board supports that, and I want to thank you for that support. I recognize more tonight than ever that the decisions that you make in these meetings is tremendously difficult. And I thank you for your fidelity and for your integrity and for doing all of the things that you do to make that possible. And with that, if the board doesn't have any question for me, we will watch Director Carter's video, and then he will be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and community members. Thank you for joining us as we present the tentative fiscal year 2027 budget proposal for Catoosa County Public Schools. My goal this evening is to walk you through our current financial position, outline our upcoming budget priorities, and review the structural layout of our anticipated revenues and expenditures. Let's begin by looking at how we've actively streamlined operations over the past year. First, I want to update the board on some FY26 budget reductions that remain in place, in addition to the broader cuts we made over the last few years. As we have previously discussed, the district began transitioning most classified groups to Kelly Education Services during FY26 to mitigate the massive increases in employee benefit costs. When I last checked, 88 positions have been transitioned via attrition, mainly in the custodial, paraprofessional, and child nutrition groups, saving the district roughly $820,000 this first year. At the same time, Superintendent Nix chose to keep our vacant assistant superintendent position unfilled during FY26, and the district did not renew some less frequently used insurance policies to capture those savings as well. Finally, as I have previously mentioned, we have implemented an innovative strategy to shift allowable general fund expenses to eSWAS funding, freeing up those vital general fund dollars. I'm happy to report that we were able to shift roughly $1.9 million in FY26. Now let's talk about our FY27 budgeting priorities. Firstly, about a few coming from the state level, starting with HB 30. Which is the new tax exemption voted on by the citizens of Catoosa County earlier this year. Per conversations with county officials, they estimate it will cost the district between $2.5 and $3 million in revenue for 2027. Replacing that lost funding now means that we will receive it in January 2027 when the new exemption comes into effect. Waiting would delay the replacement funding to January 2028 and would likely require the board to utilize a TAN in the fall of 2027. Additionally, Governor Kemp announced a surprise state bonus in March of 2026 for all state employees, including public school employees. As often happens, when things like this pop up, the state ultimately funded only 68% of our employees' salaries, leaving the district to cover the remaining $1 million needed to treat all of our employees equally. It is the financially responsible move to replenish that funding now that was unexpectedly utilized. Lastly, on the state front, HB 754, which is the mandatory 5-year audit paid for by local tax dollars, has cost more than initially projected. Cycle 1 is wrapping up with the cost settling around $165,000. The district must budget for future unknown costs associated with this legislation. The district's internal FY27 budgeting priorities were as follows. Maintaining all current student services and supports, protecting the teachers' work days, a few salary increases for our dedicated nurses and diesel mechanics, increasing academic and athletic supplements to keep pace with our neighbors, and continue to replenish the non-designated fund balance. This is the first draft of the FY27 tentative budget. As you can see, there are columns for the general fund, special revenue funds, and debt service fund. First, let's look at the general fund budget. Looking at the general fund's projected funding sources, it currently sits at 60.27% state funding, with the remaining 39.73% from local funding. As you can see, the state funding is the primary revenue stream supporting the district's instructional programs and personnel, while local funding supplements those allocations as the state intended. Projected general fund revenue is currently calculated at slightly over $149 million. For the local funding side, this is based on a 15.750 millage rate, a 98% collection rate, and net of the county's 2.5% fee to facilitate those collections. The state funding projection is based on the initial state allotment we've received and the expectations for the various CTAE grants the district receives. While state funding did increase slightly by over $1 million this year, it is largely due to the state funding its own increase in mandated health insurance and TRS costs, as well as new programs it is either partially or fully funding, such as literacy coaches in all elementary schools. Speaking of those state-mandated health insurance costs, I wanted to update the board on the most recent increases that went into effect on July 1st. Now, for all staff, the cost of the district's employee health insurance is increased to $1,935 per month per employee, or $23,220 annually. That is now officially over a 100% increase from just a few short years ago when it was $945 per month per employee. Now, looking at projected expenses for the FY27 general fund budget, I am calculating a total of $144,309,663, which is just a 0.87% change from the amended FY26 budget. When looking at the breakdown of that budget per functional category, the district's focus on instructional and student services is evident. 66.44% is for instruction, 6.57% for people services, and 7.62% for school administration. Additionally, I wanted to point out that per Superintendent Nix's direct wishes, we have continued to trim the general administration budget, which is now down to just 0.7% of the total budget. Let's look at the factors that are impacting these projected expenses. In response to feedback from the superintendent's pulse check and the strategic plan community survey conducted earlier this year, we have allocated 7 additional teaching positions in our kindergarten and first grade groups to better support instruction during those vital learning years. Additionally, we have continued to see growth in our special education student population, so to ensure those students receive the legally required services they need, 9 additional special education teachers were assigned. However, to balance out those additional positions, we have eliminated 9 secondary teachers due to decreased enrollment at that level, and paired that with a net reduction of 22 paraprofessionals across the district based on changes in student needs. As I mentioned before, we saw state-mandated increases in costs with state health and TRS. In addition, employees advanced on the salary scales as usual, and we implemented raises for the nurses and diesel mechanics, as well as increases in local supplements for academic and athletic roles. Looking at budgeted expenses as a whole, 89.4% is tied to salaries and benefits, while just 10.6% covers all operations for the district. Now, let's look at the special revenue funds. Back to our summary table, you can see it here outlined in red. So what makes up the special revenue funds? Special revenue funds are legally restricted for specific purposes by federal and/or state funding sources. The grant amounts included in the budget are based on FY27 awards, if available, or on recent trends if not. Any remaining balances within special revenue funds are restricted in fund balance for their designated purpose, and therefore are not available for appropriation or inclusion in the general fund balance. For all state and federal grants, as well as the lottery-funded pre-K program, all funds received are utilized the same year, so there is no fund balance effect. For the child nutrition program, which operates independently, the current budget projects a $585,000 deficit, which will be absorbed by its designated reserves. The deficit is driven by increased costs for staff benefits and food. As I mentioned earlier, child nutrition is one of the employee groups where we have been shifting staff over to Kelly Education Services via attrition to mitigate those benefit costs. These actions have started to close the gap. We have not yet reached equilibrium to cover the deficit. Finally, let's talk about the debt service fund. Now let's go back to our summary table one last time, where you can see it in the far right column outlined in red. For debt service, the projected revenue for FY27 is $17.2 million. The primary use of these funds is to pay upcoming scheduled debt service obligations, ensuring financial compliance. Any remaining balance after debt commitments are utilized to support essential capital project needs. To wrap up, the tentative fiscal year 2027 budget highlights our dedication to instructional excellence and student well-being through careful financial management. Our strategy of using eSPLOS funds, navigating staff changes through attrition, and matching resources to actual student needs has created a roadmap that aligns our spending with our primary academic goals. We are steadfast in our pursuit of fiscal sustainability and openness as this process continues. We appreciate your attention and your continued commitment to the success of Catoosa County Public Schools. All right, good evening, board. If there are any questions that you have, I'm here to answer. All right, thank you.
We'll go ahead and move into the public participation portion of the hearing. Before we get into the public participation segment of tonight's meeting, I'd like to review the procedures and rules for this public hearing. This hearing is held in accordance with the Georgia Taxable Bill of Rights, OCGA Section 48.5, 320.1, to receive public comment regarding the board's tentative millage rate and proposed property tax increase. To ensure an orderly, fair, and legal compliant hearing, please keep the following reminders in mind. This is the third of 3 required public hearings on the matter. The final vote to adopt the millage rate is scheduled for tonight, July 16th at 6 p.m. To ensure an orderly, fair, and legal compliant hearing, please keep the following reminders in mind. Who may speak? In accordance with Board Policy BCBI, OCGA, Section 2258, and state tax laws, public comment is open to all taxpayers and concerned citizens of Catoosa County, including non-resident property owners, parents, guardians of Catoosa County Public School students, current Catoosa County Public Schools employees, and authorized representatives of businesses, organizations operating within Catoosa County. Time limits and representations. Each speaker must sign the roster at the podium to be called in order and formally recognized by the board. Each individual speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to present their comments. Anyone requiring additional time to complete their statement is encouraged to submit their full comments to the board in writing before leaving tonight's meeting. Decorum and protocol. All comments and testimony must be addressed directly to the board chair. This hearing is structured to gather public input, not to serve as a back and forth dialogue. Board members may not respond to or debate comments during this time, though a board member may ask for clarifying questions or facts. Comments must strictly pertain to the proposed millage rate, school system budget, or tax increase. Specific personal issues involving individual employees, individual students, or pending litigation are legally protected and not appropriate topics for this open public forum. Separate resolution processes exist at both the school and district levels to address those specific matters. At the conclusion of the meeting, we kindly ask that everyone exit the chamber promptly so our custodial staff can prepare the building for tomorrow. With these legal procedures in place, we will now open the floor to public comment. As your name is called, please step forward to the microphone and clearly state your full name, residential address for our records and official minutes. Is there anyone who has signed up for public participation? I have the possibility here. First I got Mr. Craig Cross. Craig Cross.
Okay. It's time to begin. So, good evening, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the board. I appreciate you listening to what we have to say here at the public. I know public participation is very important. That way you can hear what's going on in our minds in the community. So, just for the background, I come to you from the perspective of the taxpayer. I do not have a child that's in the school system whatsoever. I run an accounting firm, and so I'm coming from the perspective of clients of mine who have brought these issues up and who have discussed them, as well as our own personal property taxes that we pay. So keeping that in mind, this is the type of sentiment that I'm hearing. Whether you're an elderly couple who's paid off their mortgage, and I'm just reading this from an article, by the way, from the Epic Times, paid off their mortgage decades ago but can't afford to pay property taxes on their home. This is really happening out there. Whether you're a recent retiree who took a part-time job at Lowe's just to pay your property taxes, I'd say even a rental property, because he can't afford to raise his tenant's rent or the tenant may move out. Whether you're an empty nester who can't downsize to smaller houses because interest rates are too high so you're just stuck, whether you're a farmer describing an impossible situation, a recent college graduate who's groaning about can't even afford a place to move into because by the time you throw the escrow in, it's just completely unaffordable. People are really tired. You can't name one other thing that we buy in life that you have to pay taxes on again and again and again. And so I implore you, the position you're going to hear from me today is not to raise the millage rate. So when you look at these things, even in an article from the Northwest Georgia News, which came out recently, they cite a statistic of 84% of the community responded to their survey that said, we do not want property taxes to go up. So I understand that your survey here locally, I'd ask you who the participants are, because if you're doing a survey to parents of kids who are involved, well, of course they don't mind contributing. I, in particular, have sending my kids to private school. So I pay not only the public school taxes, but I also pay for the private school. It's extremely challenging to be able to get not only a great education, because when you look at the grades and everything that's coming out of our public school system, the product just isn't there. When you look at the challenges, the bullying, and the other things, the product just isn't there. And so consequently, we don't participate in it. In the interim, I've got a lot of other things to say, but I'm not going to say them. You've got fewer students. This whole system is broken. There are alternatives, whether we're pushing back the state on these mandates, getting the state involved and partnering with them on more things, whether it's going through, oh my goodness, I've got so much to cover, reducing pension payouts, reducing all kinds of things. If you operated this as a business would, you would go bankrupt in the long run. And so I implore you not to make the controversial threat. Thank you very much for your time.
Bruce Van.
Good evening, school board members and superintendent. My name is Ruth Fant and I'm from District 2. It was presented that a teacher's salary was one of the lowest paid for a profession that requires a 4-year degree. So I would like to go over what a typical teacher salary looks like. According to the 2027 tentative budget detail, which thank you guys for doing that, it provided a lot of information we were asking for. It shows a teacher's salary is $66,143. The employer match for the teacher's TRS is 22.32%, which equals $14,763.12. And the health benefit is $23,220. If you add all of this up, the total salary or benefit is $104,126.12. A typical teacher who works for 30 years will receive an average pension of $3,707 per month. And if they receive this for about 30 years, that totals $1.3 million. It is comparable to someone working in the private sector receiving the same salary and putting money away in their 401k for 30 years. I heard the phrase, I want to be clear, we all care about our seniors, and I'm going to copy that. I want to be clear. We all care about our teachers, and we really do. I feel that they deserve it. But I do not think it is appropriate to guilt taxpayers into accepting a tax increase under false pretense. I also think it is misleading and inappropriate to say the non-certified employee bonus was unfunded by the state. Yes, the state did not pay it, but it did not also mandate this board to give it. The state gave it to the certified employees because they had a surplus to pay from. As much as it is a great gesture to keep things fair, the truth is we do not have a surplus, and instead our financial health trend is at a critical status. It is estimated that 40% of taxpayers are between the ages of 50 and 75. You are asking 40% to keep paying more into a system that they most likely no longer have children in, and they probably pay the bulk of the taxes. How fair is it to them that you are forcing this on them? I am asking you to vote no on the tax increase and go back and reevaluate where cuts can be made. In May, during the primary, a question was asked among Republican voters if they want the party to ensure the candidates for office are for lower taxes. 87% voted yes. Out of 8,383 people, 7,251 said that they wanted candidates who were for lower taxes. This vote total was more than my race's total, and I believe it was more than District 2 and 4 combined. So I think that was not a fair assessment of the school board race. Show us that you care about what we want. Show us that we can make a difference when we come up here and speak to you. Thank you.
Christine Lawson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Christine Lawson, District 4. Earlier today, this board was part of a presentation done by Representative Horner about FLOST, and he offered you a plan whereby using FLOST, we could eliminate property taxes on homestead properties and still adequately fund the school system. I would urge you to participate in that plan. If you have a better idea, we're open to hearing it. But I think that would give the tax relief that the people are looking for. Second thing is, Superintendent Nix during his presentation said that they had $4 to $4.5 million in unfunded mandates. The millage rate that you're proposing would raise $7.9 million. What do you need the extra money for? And then my last point is, you mentioned the internal auditor. Well, the actual law imposing the internal auditor said that the internal auditor shall have the opportunity to address the board at any meeting of the board following the superintendent giving any reports to the board at such meeting. Where's the internal auditor? We heard from Superintendent Nix. We'd really love to hear from the auditor. Thank you.
Mr. Paul Lee.
How you doing? Paul Lee from District 4. Thank you. Sound like anyway, first of all, I don't ever speak unless, first of all, give thanks to my Lord Jesus Christ for being our salvation, okay? And maybe if we had Bible in schools back then and prayer in schools, maybe everybody will have more of a biblical vision of what to do, okay? But let's go on with what's happening. This is a same song, different tune every year or two. Taxes going up, people get tired of it, but the money being spent unnecessarily. Like before, when the property was bought from beside a school over there from a developer out of the general fund for money that should have been for the school system, but it was bought for a private piece of property that you ain't even used, but it's being mowed all the time. The taxpayers are paying to keep it up, keeping it mowed and cleaned and all. And that's not only one piece. It's other pieces. And then you think about revenue. Let's look at revenue here. There was one piece of property in the county that was getting $2,000 a year property tax on it, same square footage. One of the developers, which is a commissioner, bought the property. He tore that house down and put all these other houses on it. Now that same piece of square footage property is getting over $300,000 a year in property tax. Therefore, the school is getting more taxes. Because that ain't the only development in the county. If you look around, it's coming up everywhere. So more money is coming in, but you know what? The more you get, the more you spend. And that's what's wrong with the school system. Mr. Nix, I ain't got nothing personal against you, but we hired you, the county did, to be over a budget. I own some businesses, and guess what? If I put somebody in charge of something and they can't make a budget, they're not doing their job. Their job has to be done. I was at an ice cream shop just the other day. I walked in, I was the only customer. 7 people in there. So I went and got my ice cream, and I said, how come all these employees? They said, they're all friends of the manager. All friends of the manager. That's exactly what's happening in our school system. We got a buddy system. We're hiring all the buddies. We've got too many positions that need to be cut down. I mean, you got supervised consultants. Matter of fact, our last superintendent, she retired. She's on the board now, Ms. Reese. She came back as a consultant for a little while. But now you get a building named after her. I mean, there's a lot of benefits in this county. Here's what needs to happen, though. If this gets passed, we need to sign a petition and maybe find somebody that can make a budget. Get the petition signed, or Mr. Nix, you might need to be replaced and make a budget. So I wish you well. God bless you, but we need to do something for the citizens.
Nick Ware.
Nick Ware, District 4. Wasn't really going to speak tonight, but some things came up that I just need to set the record straight. All right, so the audit that Chance and Austin had said. Chance said it was $200,000. Austin said it was $165,000. Whenever I did my open records request from Renzo Wiggins, it came in at $73,300. That number doesn't work out, especially whenever Cherry Burkhardt says that it's a not to exceed price of $115,000. So if you look at what just happened here with their line item, they have, I can't even remember writing. Wide performance and an internal audit risk and assessment. We got that assessment that was just here like a month ago, right? That assessment with the site visits, the assessment is $67,750. Site visits was $5,250. So whenever they invoiced at $73,000, the $73,300 lines up. So that means there would be a balance of $42,000 to equate the $115,000 that they quoted. How is it that it goes with an additional $50,000 to $85,000 in a month and a half since I've pulled this? The numbers are not right. You guys should do a better job in looking at this and have them to tell you where that extra $50,000 or $85,000, whichever one is correct, $200,000 or the other. The other thing is that at the beginning of the presentation, the superintendent said that the state employees are certified teachers. State employees, they're state employees, right? So then you have the
qualified. They're our employees, county employees. So the state didn't tell him he had to give it, so it wasn't a mandate. There wasn't a mandate that was there, but the state said you've got to give your employees that are for the county $2,000. Now, he probably did it out of kindness in his heart, seeing as an equal opportunity employer, or whatever, you know? But that was not a mandate. I don't like the scare tactics here. All classified employees are not state employees. Their salary and benefits come from the local citizens here in Catoosa County. The other thing, the third thing, is that House Bill 30, yeah, there was an election that happened. The people did unanimously vote for this. It was 90% of the taxpayers here in Catoosa County, the voters, that 90% said that they wanted tax relief for seniors. I did the math on that before the election, and it should equate to $83 per person or property owner. But your proposal is $195 per property owner. This is well over 100% higher than what my calculations were. The math is not mathing. Thank you.
Rebecca Lapp. I don't know what district I'm in. I live over on Battle Drive in the Road. I don't have any children in the school system. I'm in that 50 to 75 range. We purchased our 1965 house in 2018 for $140,000 approximately. In 21, we refinanced for just under $200,000 to take some money out. Interest rates were low. And then the market went nuts. We got our assessment this year, $364,000 is what they're saying our house is. I didn't buy a $300,000 house. $195, I'm sorry, I meant to apologize for wearing my sunglasses. They're the only corrective lenses I have, and I can't afford to replace them. $195 on a $300,000 house. That would have bought me new glasses. But I'm not looking at a $300,000 house. I'm looking at $364,000. This has got to stop. I don't know what else to do. We may lose our house because of our taxes. Our payment goes up every year. And on top of that, y'all want to increase the millage rate and cost us even more. Our grown children, 26 and 28, still live with us because they can't afford a house or even an apartment now. People around here can't do this for very much longer. That's all I gotta say.
James Coles.
Thank you. My name is James Coles. I'm in the 4th District. Lived in Catoosa County over 30 years, put 3 children through Catoosa County school system and 6 grandchildren. You know, I've watched this school system grow significantly over the years, and it's gotten a lot prettier, a lot more bells and whistles, a lot more stuff. The only problem is I don't think the education's gotten any better. You know, there's a lot of fanciness to it, but you know, the basics, the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and the basic education that they need, that my 3 children got in Catoosa County schools, I'm not seeing that reflected in my grandchildren. And I was in a part of Erlanger Health System and management, and we were forced to keep to a budget. If we didn't keep to our budget, the hospital didn't maintain their budget, they brought in outside auditors. They told us where we were going to cut. We didn't have the opportunity to do it anymore. They gave us the first round to make the cuts, and then if we couldn't get within budget, they came in and did it for us. This school system needs to be run like a business. It's not. It just, whatever you can take in, you spend. And you add more and build more. And, you know, I heard them talking about a literacy officer or person. Why would you need a literacy person? I don't care if it's mandated or not. You have to fill that position. Are they going to close you down if you don't? If you're doing your job, why would you need a literacy officer? I mean, that's what your job is, to teach people so that they're not illiterate. This has got to stop. There's too much money being spent and wasted. I'm a proponent for this audit. If you have nothing to hide, you will hide nothing. And you don't look at the books yourself. You get an outside person to come in and look at them and give you an honest assessment of what's going on. So I'm thrilled about the audit. And there's always room to cut. You're asking me to cut my budget because you need more of my money, but I don't see you guys seriously cutting enough. Thank you.
Jennifer, Matt, Matt.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mudd at 2065 Saunders Road. And I would like to start by saying I'm not against raising funds where we need to and when we need to. But I believe also that we need to meet the demands of the school and to that end our children. But what I have a problem with is why are we looking at our land taxes? Hikes are, or why is it our only solution? I believe we already have the money. We just need to take a closer look at our budget and other resources to find and explore other avenues. For example, in March of 2023, my husband and I purchased our house for $329,000. Mr. Sharp, who purchased the land to put the house on it, purchased it for only $35,000. That is a huge markup in land tax. And then I also found out that he also built a couple other houses in our neighborhood, which I'm assuming are in similar situations. Cheap land, big costs sell out. Well, and to also add to that, our neighbor's house, 2049 Saunders, was initially purchased for $150,000 for back in 2022, and then just sold in the end of June for $300,000. Once again, markup, double the cost. And I'm sure my neighborhood, my block, is not the only one in Catoosa County that has this, has all these land taxes increased. And it's also my understanding last year, the tax hike on our land was to go to the schools. My payment, my mortgage payment went up $147 a month. And that means for us, $1,764 a year extra. So although I agree we need to meet our budget and not go into a deficit, tax increases are permanent. And so I caution against raising taxes again. Where is the increased revenue going? Where's the money? Where is all that? And to that end, I ask, is a tax increase to meet our budget every year going to be a regular occurrence? Or will it govern our governing party make a responsible decision to explore other avenues? Thank you.
Rebecca Maddox.
My name is Rebecca Maddox. I'm from District 4. Thank you for listening, even though I feel like your minds were already made up. What tries me to speak to you. I'm a taxpayer. I have had children in the school system. I've been a teacher in the Catoosa County school system, so I've seen waste firsthand. I also currently work for an organization that accredits K through 12 schools nationwide. Superintendent Nix said that we should not be the lowest funded county. Disagree with that. Being the lowest funded county, providing a great education is a win for everybody. So let's talk about some data. Superintendent Nix left out of his presentation that, according to the consensus data, in the last 5 years, there have been 2,000 extra housing units in the last 5 years. 1,500 of those units are new construction. That's a chunk of change. So the question is, can we educate our children at a lower price? And the answer is absolutely, overwhelmingly yes. I have an article here that says, public schools spend more per pupil than private schools in all but one state, that's Utah, smashing the underfunded myth. So let's drill down to Georgia. Georgia spends approximately $3,000 more per student than the private school counterpart. So you say there must be a trade-off. You're right, there is. Last week, our organization put out data that shows that in every grade level, standardized scores are higher than in public schools. That's the trade-off for $3,000 less per pupil. Every day we ask our students to be creative, to be problem solvers, and to think outside the box. I would ask you to do the same. You should do what we ask our students rightly to do every day. Catoosa County does not have a money problem. Catoosa County has a leadership problem. Thank you.
Harry Presley.
Thank you. I'm at 96 Creek Court, and I'm in the city of Ringo, so whatever district that is. I don't know. But anyway, this week you guys are the most powerful people in Catoosa County financially. You're going to touch every household with what you decide. And it's not going to matter much to me. I'm 74, excuse me, and I'll be turning 75 real soon. So I'm going to be exempt from school taxes. But this county has about 18% of impoverished students. If you raise the 13.6, whatever percent you're looking for, the people that actually work for the school board, the school system, excuse me, they're not going to worry too much about $100 a year, $150 a year. But the people that are impoverished, their $50 a month for their rent is going to be the difference in a pair of shoes for their child next year. And you don't want them leaving the county because the state and federal funding for one child is $10,454 a year for Catoosa County. So every child that run out of the county by raising their rent is going to cost you $10,454 next year. And overall, that's $18,942. So I'm asking you to hold it at 0.5 mils, and I know you don't like that. But last year we projected at the end of 2026 that there would be $1.96 million left in the surplus. There was actually $4.84 million, and I know that's not completely finished yet. But that, along with the 2027 be $4.14 million, you'll have a surplus at the end of 2027, somewhere around $9 million. I know we need to increase the surplus fund, but we don't have to do it all at one time. And I've called this kind of laughingly the Millionaires Club, because this fellow over here and I like Mr. Nix, he'll get $1 million worth of benefits and salary about every 4 years. The average principal will get $1 million worth of benefits and salaries about every 6 years. So it's not a poor school system. We're not broke. People get good raises around here. And actually, I think your pay is well within the range specified. It's fine. I think Fulton County Schools pay $5 million a year. But out of time, so y'all keep an eye on it. Just do the best you can. Thank you.
That ends the public participation portion of our meeting. One action item, Superintendent Nix, your recommendation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I do. Whereas the Catoosa County Board of Education, having participated in both formal and informal budget sessions, and having reviewed the FY27 tentative budget and the FY27 final budget as presented by the superintendent, and whereas the FY27 budget was prepared using a tentative millage rate of 15.750, and whereas the current 2026 tax digest and 5-year history of levy, including the proposed millage rate, was published in the newspaper of general circulation on July 8th, 2026, which is at least a week prior to the establishment of a millage rate, and now therefore be it resolved by the Catoosa County Board of Education, I recommend to adopt the FY 2027 budget and millage rate as proposed and presented on July 16, 2026. The proposed budget was presented by revenue category and expenditure function by government and by government fund type. Notice of date, time, and place at which the final adoption of the budget and millage rate would be considered was advertised in the newspaper of general circulation, Catoosa County. That is my recommendation.
We have a recommendation, Superintendent, we have a motion. Motion, do I have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second, we have any discussion?
I would like to address a couple of things that were said tonight. I've only been on this board for 18 months, and since I've been on the board, we were highly criticized over and over for our low fund balance. And we were actually making progress on adding to our fund balance so that we would have an emergency fund if it were necessary, similar to the fund balance that we needed during the tornado. And so we were actually making progress toward adding to our fund balance. Unfortunately, House Bill 30 was dropped by our local legislature, which will create a $3 million deficit in our budget and take away any progress that we made toward restoring our fund balance. The mandated private audit that was also dropped by our local legislature is more than likely going to cost us over 5 years $500,000. And historically, just like the state always does, it does mandate the teacher bonus. And we have always made sure that all of our employees receive a bonus. This budget does not include raises for any of our teachers. And so I would not be voting for this millage increase had it not been for these 3 items, because we were actually going to have a balanced budget and make progress toward our fund balance. So I do also want to say that something that I have said for many years, which is
the public school system is one of the most important parts of the infrastructure of a community. And when you weaken the public school system, you weaken the community. And I'm choosing to make sure that our employees do not have to take furlough days next year, and making sure that our students are going to be able to participate in the programs that we have provided for them. And that's why I'm voting tonight to raise the millage rate.
Any other discussion?
Yes. Like Ms. Reeves, we've heard over and over and over about our, I'll call it high-risk reserve balance being low. If we don't proactively do something about that, which we've had multiple criticism in the fact that we need to be visionaries and we need to prepare for the future. Us knowingly having a $2.5 to $3 million deficit and knowing that it's coming and us not doing anything about it is not being proactive. And everyone, not everyone, but we have been strongly criticized for that. And so for us to say, you shouldn't be doing that now, when last week the same people were saying you should be proactive, that's hard for me to comprehend that kind of mentality. I appreciate our seniors and I appreciate tax relief. I want that. The reality is we have challenges that we have got to take care of. Our students they deserve a good education, and they're getting a good education despite what a lot of people think. Our graduation rates are higher. Our test scores are higher than the state averages. So we're doing well there, regardless of what some people may think. So I like Ms. Reeves, will be supporting a slight millage increase. The last 10 years, we have not taken an increase. We've actually reduced the millage rate as much as we can. But we are in a time now where we're backed into a corner. And we need some help from a state level. There are things that can be done at a state level that potentially could help us. Off the top of my head, we give them $5 million immediately. If we could keep half of that, $2.5 million, that would tremendously help our budget. So we need some legislation to help us take care of that. The local tax people pay for our non-certified people, our classified staff, and they are the backbone of our schools. They are your custodians. They are the cafeteria workers. They are the people that greet your kids when they come in the morning at the desk. They're the ones that the kids go to and call their moms when they're not feeling well. These people are the backbone. Our teachers are on the front lines, and I support them 100%. But we have the backbone of people that we need to take care of, and that's the local people. That's you guys. That's our lowest paid people in the county or in the school system. So I'll also be voting for that increase.
Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion to send the council discussion. All those in favor of the recommendation? That's unanimous. We have a motion to adjourn. Second? Discussion. All those in favor of adjourn? We're adjourned.